Okay, let's start talking about walls. Um, what I've got here, the file is called walls_1. You can open it and follow along with me. Walls are different from components. When we talk about components, things like doors, windows, chairs, tables, refrigerators. Those are individual files that have been modeled and created, whereas walls are a system family that stay in that file. Okay, now the ones that when you open up a new project starting with a template, there are certain walls that are created and saved in that template. You can copy and paste walls from one project to another project, and they will copy over. But they're pretty much defined in the family. And so we have three basic types. Okay, I say three basic types. There's three types of wall families. The basic wall, which is what you will use most of the time. What's known as a stacked wall, and then a curtain wall. Okay, and if you go to your project browser and go down to walls and expand that, you'll see those three categories. And if you open up each category, you'll see the walls that are in this file because they were in the template, okay? So we got an exterior brick over CMU stacked wall, three types of curtain walls, and then a lot of basic wall types. Okay, so same thing we see over here in the properties. So let's start with a curtain wall. Okay, and so all of these walls here are generic. And the reason we have or use generic walls is that when we first start designing a project, we don't really know what thickness the exterior walls should be, or what materials they should be, or what structure it should be, or whatever. But we're just working on an idea for the building. And so we'll use a generic wall that's of an approximate thickness of what we're going to have. And then we, roughly design the building. And then we can apply materials to a generic wall, because if you remember some of the pull downs here, we've got generic walls, masonry, filled, brick, a generic brick, and all it is it just had a material applied to it. Okay, and then so we do this to kind of get an idea of what the building's going to look like. And then once we get more into the design process and we know what our structure is going to be, we can come back and replace the generic walls with ones with structure. Okay, so curtain wall. Let's change this wall to the curtain wall 1. Okay, now curtain wall is what you see in commercial buildings. And it's, the aluminum channels with the really thick glass panels inside, and there'll be, muttons and mullions in there dividing up the lights. It's strictly commercial. It's rare, very rare, you'll see one in residential construction, although they are there too, but mostly commercial. What we term as a curtain wall would be on a high-rise type building in which the exterior surface of the wall is mostly glass. Okay, and it has the aluminum channels for the frames. Well, those channels are what are attached to the structure of the building. And then the exterior wall itself is a curtain, if you think of it in that way, because it's hanging off of the building and it's covering the exterior of the building. So it's called a curtain wall. Well, in Revit, the curtain wall 1 family it's not parallel layers, it's just a piece of glass. Okay. And then we're not going to cover how to do curtain systems here in this course, but in this case, you could use that wall family and then create a grid and add mullions to the grid. Okay, so let's change it now to the exterior glazing family. And here we have grids that have been applied to it, but no mullions applied. Okay, so let's change it one more time to the storefront. And typically what we call storefront, even though it's the same thing as a curtain wall, the storefront is the front of a store. Duh. All right, you've seen these every time you walk into a commercial type building, a store, whatever, office buildings, these things. And this family already has the framing and the mullions and the glass panels. And the size and the spacing of them are in the wall family. Okay, now they can be edited. But that's the storefront type stuff. And we're not going to deal with that again until you get in the 1133 class. All right, so let's go to this one on the right, and let's change it to a stacked wall. And we only have one in here. And a stacked wall is a unique family in that it's actually two basic wall families joined together. And we use this when we have walls of two differing thicknesses. Okay, and so you can imagine this like being a foundation wall with, the brick wall over it, or maybe you got, it's just you got two different wall thicknesses. Okay, they're a little complicated to work with. But if I go in here and go to edit type, now you can see it here. Okay, and so this is, we'll go edit structure, and here, instead of like we showed with the other walls, and I'll show you in a moment on these, here we have two different wall families, one on top of the other. Okay. And to make changes to these things, the materials in it, you would have to edit those basic wall types. But here we have a set height of 3 feet for the bottom portion, and then the top portion has a variable height. Okay, so that's a stacked wall. I just want you to see that, what they look like and how they are. So let's take this one and let's take it to a exterior brick on metal stud. Okay. And so now let's go to here and let's go to edit type. And here's where you set your materials and the different things that you're going to be using in this wall. Okay. Oh, if you don't see this picture, then hit the preview button right there. Okay. And so let's go to structure. And we see here, this is the list of layers that this wall family is made up of. And the exterior is at the top, the interior side is at the bottom. Okay. And the first column is the function of whatever that layer is. Second column is the material, and then the thickness. And so layer 1 is finish 1, and it's masonry. And so if you don't see the section, you come right here and you can toggle back and forth between floor plan and section view. So we'll leave it on floor plan for right now. Here it doesn't show you which layer you're talking about, but you can see it. We got the masonry here, and then we have a thermal air barrier, or not air barrier, but air space of 3 inches. And then a membrane layer is a layer of 0 thickness. Okay, so you think about building wrap, the Tyvek wrap, or maybe asphalt tar paper, anything that would wrap around the building, plastic, Tyvek, and stuff like that. Okay, so it's in here because it has somewhat of an insulation value and a heat gain, heat loss value. Okay, so we include that material in here. And then layer 4 was the substrate, which is the wood sheathing. And then we have what's shown here as core boundary. And let me switch back to the section view here and zoom in on this a little bit more. And so if I click on these different items, layers, it highlights it in the drawing. Well, the core boundary has 0 thickness to it, but it's included in every wall family, because if you remember back on our dimensioning and our line location and alignments, face of core and center of core was one of our options. So it's built into the wall family, and you can move things, into and out of the core area as you need, but it's there. Okay, and so moving on down, we got another membrane, which is a vapor barrier on the interior side, and then a finish 2, which is the gypsum wallboard. Okay, now and thicknesses, of course. Okay, now the numbering system, the numbers in brackets. Can I make this a little bigger? Yeah. So the number in brackets, if you notice, structure is 1, substrate is 2, and then finish 2 is number 5, finish 1 is number 4. So the thermal is probably number 3. Yeah, okay. What the number in brackets mean is the hierarchy in which they are joined together at intersections. Okay. And finish 1 should always be on the exterior. Finish 2 should always be on the interior. But then as you place these things in here, well, let's say let me just click on one to show you the change here. So here's our options. Structure, substrate, thermal, finish 1, finish 2, membrane layer. Those are the options that we have in building a wall. And as I said, the numbers in brackets are the hierarchy or the order in which these things join and when they go to trim and join, okay? Okay, so that's all we're going to do here for right now. Start a new project from an architectural template, and then let's draw a generic wall. And generic wall. And I'm going to go right to left. Zoom in on it here. So right now we're at coarse detail level. So I want to change to medium detail level. And you can see nothing much changed with this because it's a generic wall. Okay. And if you haven't figured it out yet, yeah, thin lines. Okay. So let's look at the type and the structure of this. And you can see it just has one layer, structure, 8-inch thick, and there's no material assigned to it. All right. So let's change this wall type. So you select it. Let's come over here and let's change it to an exterior wall. We'll just go ahead and go back with the brick on metal stud. All right. And so now you see we're at detail, medium on our detail level. If I change back to coarse, I get just the exterior lines of the wall. Doesn't matter what color, if we're shaded or not, you know, that is irrelevant. And we use this when we're deciding on in our views and our prints as to what amount of detail we want to show. Do we want to show every layer of the wall system, or do we want just the overall wall thickness? Okay. Okay, so let's kind of in the same vein, let's go back here into our properties. And let's look at a few things here. So under construction, we've covered the structure. And I will show you how to build your own walls in some videos for the 1129 course, okay? Because you're going to be building your own walls there, okay? So wrapping, I'm going to show some examples of wrapping in another video. But basically, it's like at the end of a wall, you can determine which features wrap around. Well, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and do that here now. So wrapping at ends. Let's change that to exterior, okay? So you can see now how the brick has a return and comes back around. Okay, but however, you see the interior gypboard continues to the end of the wall. Well, that's a very unusual situation that you would have there. So when it comes to wraps, you got to be really, really careful of what you're doing and how you're doing it. Okay. That's not what I wanted. Let's go back into edit type. Okay, the width is calculated from the structure and all your material thicknesses, okay? The function, you have several options here: interior, exterior, foundation, retaining soffit, and core shaft. The function is assigned to every wall type so that you can filter things when you're doing reports, or when you're running prints, or you're running evaluations or analysis. Every wall needs a function. And then within that wall, as you see up here in the structure, you can tell which items are structural material. Okay? And so most of the time, whatever your core is, that's going to be a structural material, if you want it to show up on a structural drawing. Okay, so that's what has to be thought about before doing that, okay? Course, we talked about course scale in another video. Okay, the analytical properties. All of this information comes from the materials assigned to the wall. Okay, and this is, Revit uses this to calculate heat loss, heat gain, HVAC data, things like that. So Revit can evaluate energy efficiency, if you will, of a building, or the insulative value of the building. Absorptance and roughness, these deal with the absorbed radiant and reflectivity of the exterior of the building and stuff like that. So until you start getting into the HVAC and heat gain, and maybe you've heard of LEED certification, LEED. It's energy conservation. Okay, but Revit will do that stuff, and that's where it's at right there. Coming on down, we talked about assembly codes earlier in another video that deals with specifications. With walls, you can add a fire rating value here, and that will come up in the schedules. You might could pull it into the wall tag, I don't know. But you'll see in some of the walls here, it has a fire rating already in the name. Okay, and that's a lot of the stuff there. Let's see, we're at 20 minutes, so I'm going to stop this video and then we'll start over again.